2025 has been a strange year that has left far too many Canadians feeling like they're slipping through the cracks and that their lives are only getting harder. But it didn't start that way. When Canadians went to the polls in 2025, there was a real sense of turning the page. After 10 years of Liberal government, people were exhausted by rising costs, shrinking paychecks, and record food bank use. Jobs leaving Canada, and young families losing hope of ever owning a home. Everywhere I went in Middlesex, London, I heard the same thing. We need change. We need someone who remembers who they work for. Being re-elected by this community for a third time is one of the greatest honors of my life, and I never take it for granted. I've now served 6 years as a member of Parliament, and I can say honestly and humbly that every single thing I do in Ottawa is for the people of Middlesex, London. If a policy doesn't help families here, I won't support it. If legislation threatens your rights, your livelihood, your faith community, or your safety, I will oppose it. And if a proposal lifts up rural Canada, strengthens food security, defends religious or personal freedom, or restores common sense to government, then I'll always fight for it. Many of us hoped that a new Liberal leader would bring a new direction to the government. Sadly, the opposite has happened. Instead of renewal, we got more of the same, and in some cases, something even more heavy-handed, more expensive, and more disconnected from the realities of working families. The government's 2025 budget was the clearest example. Canadians cannot afford the Prime Minister's costly credit card budget, one that doubles down on overspending, buries young Canadians under decades of debt, and still fails to produce results. You don't need an economics degree to see the pattern. Big deficits plus rising interest rates equals a crushing debt load for future generations. We now know from the Parliamentary Budget Officer that key numbers in the budget simply don't add up. The Prime Minister used his skills as a banker to cook the books. Projections were massaged to look better than reality. But no amount of spin can hide the facts. Food prices, housing costs, and job losses keep getting worse. If Liberal spending actually worked, more than 4 million Canadians would not be relying on food banks today. Unfortunately, while families stretch every dollar they have, we've also seen the government handing out blank checks to multinational corporations without demanding a job guarantee in return. Stellantis took $13 billion, while the Liberal government sought no protection for workers. CAMI workers are being laid off right before Christmas. Algoma Steel received a $400 million loan, and then they announced 1,000 layoffs anyway. On the West Coast, forestry towns continue to suffer because the government failed to secure a deal on softwood lumber. When public money goes out the door, Canadian jobs must be protected, period, full stop. Now, I know many in our area like to think of cooperation as a solution to our political problems. While I wish it were that simple, cooperation requires two sides. And in this Parliament, we have a government that routinely puts its political interests ahead of the needs of Canadians. Conservatives can and do propose common sense solutions. However, when the government steals our ideas and implements an ineffective, watered down version instead of talking to us, it becomes clear that Canada cannot experience meaningful change until Conservatives form government. We cannot build a foundation for common ground when one side refuses to mix the concrete. Every day in the House of Commons, we see legislation that pushes the country further and further away from practical solutions and closer to heavy-handed ideological control. Bill C-9 is a deeply concerning example, an attack on religious freedom dressed up as public safety. Removing the safeguard that prevents people of faith from being prosecuted simply for quoting scripture is not how you keep Canadians of any faith safe. It is insane to think that you can protect people by criminalizing their beliefs. As someone who cares deeply about the rights and freedoms of every Canadian, and who has been vocal about my personal faith, this bill hits close to home. It is an example of how disconnected the government has become from the values that built Canada. Foreign interference is another area where the government continues to stall. As a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee and Shadow Minister for International Development, I see firsthand in my work how hostile regimes exploit our weaknesses. For years, conservatives have pushed for a foreign agents registry. For years, the Liberals have delayed. Meanwhile, Canadians continue to face risks from disinformation to intimidation because this government refuses to act decisively. This is consistently more apparent in the North. Canada's Arctic sovereignty is at risk from foreign interference, underinvestment, and the rapid military expansion of hostile regimes. Northern communities need real infrastructure, real defense capacity, and real economic development, not another stack of glossy reports. All of this matters here at home because every global threat eventually finds its way to our borders, and every national decision eventually finds its way to your family budget. Families in Middlesex London are paying more for everything while getting less. Food inflation is still double the Bank of Canada's target. Farmers, truckers, they're being taxed more at every step of the supply chain. Record numbers of working people now rely on food banks. You cannot tax farmers and truckers and expect groceries to get cheaper. So whether I'm challenging the government's runaway spending, fighting for religious freedom, or standing up for our local workers, my priority has never changed. I'm here to represent Middlesex London. I'm here to fight for lower costs, safer streets, and a government that remembers who it works for. I'm here to preserve the rights and freedoms that built this country. Canadians deserve a government that meets them where they are, not one that tells them what to believe, how to live, or how much money that they must pay for less. I'm proud that Middlesex London sees this, and I hope will keep putting their faith in me for years to come. If we're fortunate, the rest of Canada will feel the same and finally bring a Conservative government to Ottawa in the next election.